Hello, people. Welcome back to another video by your good friend, Chad Marco, the big Anaki. Make sure you guys attack that like button. Check out my other social media. Go support the Patreon. And let's have a conversation. So this video is called The Trauma of Being Raised by a Single Mother. Man, this is gonna be a good video. So I'm sure you guys know that one of the biggest problems plaguing the Black community is that a lot of us are raised by single mothers, and it comes with a myriad of different problems and issues. And that's kind of what I'm going to cover in this video. And there was actually a video that I saw on X the other day that inspired me to go ahead and make this video. And it was a young man who was trying to explain to his female family members like what not having a father or a masculine role model in the household does to young men in particular. And I'm going to play that video real quick.
When you're raising especially a boy, I came from a household where it was just a mom. I had my grandfather and I had my pops, but there was no man in the household. I started arguing with females once I started to go through things. It got physical orders. You know why? Because I was an emotional boy. I didn't have nobody in the household to say, okay, look, this is not how you go about it. Go to the gym. I had to learn this from YouTube. Read books. Hold on, let me finish. I had to read books. Go on YouTube. Do these different avenues I had to learn. Yes, grandpa telling me certain things, pops telling me certain things. But when you have a man in a household, the chances of that boy that's becoming a man to grow up emotional, 80% of the people that's in jail came from single household mothers. Meaning this, if I'm in a club and a nigga step on my sneakers, yo bro, what's up, bro, what you doing? Now guess what? Somebody died, somebody going to jail. You know why? Because that boy wasn't raised in a household with men. That's the problem in society, because females with the mindset that I don't need a man. That's the reason why we have females in this generation that's having kids that I don't need a man. Now they growing up without fathers. Now God raising emotionalized boys.
No. That's not even everybody's situation. That's not even everybody's situation.
Okay, so in that video, you know, you see this guy and he's explaining to, again, his female family members, like what are the issues that come with, you know, being raised by a single mother. And, you know, one of the things that he said that stood out to me, because I heavily related to this, but he talked about how he had to go on YouTube and read books and things like that just to kind of cultivate and find his own sense of masculinity. And that's really the same journey that I had to go on. You know, when I reached a certain age and I started getting into self-improvement, I started reading books. I was looking at different YouTube influencers and things like that. And so that's kind of where I started to kind of learn about masculine principles and ideas that I was never going to get from my mother. And of course, growing up, my father, he wasn't around much. I saw him maybe like 2 or 3 times a year. You know, I had a step nigga. You guys know I did a whole video about that. But, you know, he was a drug addict. And so, and even he wasn't around much, thank God, but he was no type of positive influence, you know, for me at that age. So I didn't have, you know, positive masculine influences when I was growing up. And it took me getting into self-improvement to really start to cultivate my own masculinity. Again, it was books and YouTube and things like that. And this will sound corny, but even anime was a big factor in me cultivating my own masculinity. You know, watching stuff like Dragon Ball Z, Yu Yu Hakusho, whatever the case may be, Gurren Lagann, you see masculine characters that have to work hard and embrace suffering and challenge. And essentially they develop a sense of stoicism in order to face the conflicts and the antagonists that they have to deal with, you know, each changing arc. And so even stuff like anime was a big influence on me in terms of like really it's a discovery of masculinity and what it is. And it's like when I think back to like getting into working out and pushing myself, realize like, wait a minute, like last week when I could only run around the block 1 time before I was fatigued. Now I can do it twice. Now I can do it 3. Like it was little things like that that made me start to realize the power that was within me, that could have never been realized by my mother. Like, because the thing is, as hard as women may try, men and women, we have completely different experiences. And women don't understand what it's like to be a man any more than a man understands what it's like to be a woman. And to be honest, being a man comes with much higher expectations on so many different levels and different aspects of life. And again, without that understanding, women, how they going to know what to impart upon a young man in order for him to grow? Like, you don't have the energy, you don't have the experiences to show a young man, to show a boy how to be a man the way that a man can. And the other thing that I also had to do was just learning how to do things for myself. I learned how to cook for myself, do my own laundry. I remember it got to a point where I would rather walk, miles to the store before I would ask my mom for a ride there. So doing different things like that, that's what allowed me to, discover and cultivate my own sense of masculinity. But you also see that, that young man, he talks about how, a lot of guys, what ends up happening, especially for like the projects and the hoods, they develop like thug masculinity, which is really, it's like, it's a volatile version of manhood that you see that gangsters and thug type guys have, where it's a mixture of masculinity with the instability, the emotional instability of women. Because really, when you think about it, masculinity is a powerful force. It's like, it's a fire, it's a flame, but it has to be controlled. It has to be tempered. And I think what you have with, like, again, the thug culture, gangster guys, shit like that, they kind of stray from the mother, and they go to the streets, and they, collaborate with other young boys and things like that. But none of them have like the proper guidance of a man to teach them, righteous masculinity. So all they have is like wild, emotional pseudo masculinity. So it's like he said, somebody stuffed on my shoe, I'm gonna take it to 100. I gotta fight. Like, what the fuck? Punch. Like that skit in the Boondocks, a nigga moment. Like that's that, because that masculine energy is there, whether you have a father or a male role model or not. But the point of those men is not just to impart more masculinity onto you, but it's to teach you how to deal with emotions, to teach you how to, have a sense of integrity and principles and codes and things like that. And without that, then that wildfire mixed with the emotional instability of feminine energy, that's a dangerous combination. Like he said, most prisoners were raised by single mothers. Like it's not a coincidence. But when I talk about the trauma of being raised by a single mother, I think that it's nothing defines it like emotional instability. Like that is the core of the trauma. And I've told you guys this before, but my niece, I always remember when she said this, because this is when it started to really click for me, and I like, because I was starting to grow up and become more of a masculine man. And when my niece told me this, I started to kind of see like, oh, this is why you need a man and a woman in the house. And so my niece, she told me, she said, I wish grandma, which is my mother, and my mother, my sister, I wish they were as calm as you are. And so what did she mean by that? And so the thing about my niece, when she was growing up, of course, as kids do, they make mistakes. And so whenever my niece would make mistakes or fuck up around me, my way of disciplining her was way different. Like I never hit I never put hands on her ever. I never put hands on my niece. When she would fuck up, I wouldn't get up. Like I wouldn't blow up. I wouldn't get emotional or anything like that. Like, I would check her ass and I would, explain to her why the behavior was unacceptable, how to correct the behavior, like, oh, you did this, depending on the severity of the mistake, of course. But basically, I wouldn't lose my cool with my niece, and she noticed that. But my mom and her mom, they would lose their cool. Like, they would blah, 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 blah. Right? They would get crazy. And, that sort of reaction wouldn't really have a better effect than, me being calm. And it goes back to one of my favorite books, Way of the Superior Man. And it talks about how the difference between like how men and women look at the timeline of their relationships, right? And so this book, it says that with men, when we look at our relationships, we look at it in terms of like past, present, and future, right? So if you have a friend that has a good track record from the past, but they make a mistake in the present, you're going to be forgiving towards that person because you understand, okay, this guy overall is trustworthy, but he made a mistake, or, he went left this one time, but based on his track record, I feel comfortable forgiving him or reacting in such a way where it's like, okay, well, most of the time he's a great friend. I'm not going to overreact. But with women, it doesn't matter how good you do in the past. It's about the present. So if you make a mistake now, it's the worst thing ever. And that properly explains like the difference between how I would deal with my niece's mistakes and how my mother and her mother would. Because when I would look at my niece, I'm looking at the full timeline. Like, wait, she's a child. She's a teenage. Like, they make mistakes. Like, I think about my own childhood. Like, I made some of these same mistakes. So I'm looking at it from that perspective. And so I'm reacting accordingly. I'm not looking at it in a vacuum like, oh, this is just the worst thing ever. Let me just blow my top. And I always remembered that because it, like, looking at myself and how I dealt with my niece's mistakes versus how the women in my family did, there's the perfect example of the way a man deals with these types of situations versus a woman. Like, and this is a funny story too. I remember when my niece was a kid, I would always tell her, when we go in the store, you got 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And if you ain't got your shit, then I'm gonna leave you. One day she tested me and thought that I wouldn't leave her ass. I walked after like the 5 minute limit out, cause she would go in there and just waste too much time, right? That's why I had to do that. After like 5 minutes, I walked out and she came out. She was like, "You left me." I said, "Yeah, I won't plan." But right, like, that's how men discipline. That's how we deal with kids and shit like that. Women, is wow, like, you better hurry the fuck up, you stupid bitch. And I'm not exaggerating, because I'm sure you guys have seen shit like that, like women cussing out their kids in the damn grocery store, cussing them out like they hoes and harlots off the street. Shit is crazy. But when I talk about emotional instability, because then this is so key, and I'm telling you, man, like, it's truly traumatic because you have to like really reprogram yourself to get out of this. So it's like growing up as a kid, when you make mistakes, you are at the mercy of how your parents react to your mistakes. Whether they overreact or not, you're at the mercy of it. So they create the frame of what your mistakes mean. They define your mistakes by their reaction. So if they react calmly, that's the frame. If they beat your ass, that's the frame. If they yell, that's the frame. And the thing about my mother is that what I realize now that traumatized me was that she would oftentimes overreact to little mistakes that I made. And what that did was it kind of created a trigger in me where when my mom would overreact, I would buy into her frame instead of staying locked into my own. Because again, this is my parent. Even though she's a single mother, this is my parent. And it took me years to get out of that. And this is the perfect story that really, this was a turning point in me and my mom's relationship. So my mom, and mind you, I'm an adult at this point. I'm probably like 20 years old, right? That's how long it took me to break out of this. My mom went on vacation and she was gone for like the whole weekend. And so I'm pretty much in charge of taking care of the house. And so I'm on it because I want my mom to come home and, feel like, he took good care of the house. Nothing was the house is still together. It ain't crumbled. the police didn't have to come and the dishes are washed. Everything is clean. I wanted her to understand that she could trust me to watch over the house. And so I was on top of it that whole weekend. And I just knew, like, when she got back, we were going to be cool, right? So my mom comes back. She looked over everything I did right. And she pointed out the one thing I did wrong. What was that? I took a chair from the kitchen and brought it to the living room. I forgot why I brought it there. But that's basically what I did. I took it because I think the living room didn't have like a single chair. It had like couches. And I forgot what I was doing, but I needed a single chair for that. I was like spending a lot of time in the living room at that point. And I didn't even think about it because it wasn't a big deal to me. And so she came home and she was like, why is this chair in the living room? And I'm like, I'll get it, ain't a big deal. But the way she reacted, I could tell she was upset about it. And so I was like, you know what? Let me just go in the backyard because my mom, when she came back, she was still with her friends. And I was like, I don't want to embarrass my mom in front of her friends. So I'm going to go in the backyard and just like disappear, right? So they can just leave and then I'll deal with the chair later. So I'm in the backyard like chilling, and my mom comes to the backyard and she brings up the chair again. I looked at my mom, I said, leave me alone. And I mean, when I said it, it sounds so simple, but when I said it, I was dead. I was like, you better leave me alone. Like, I'm not playing with you, mama. Like, don't leave me alone about this motherfucking chair. I didn't cuss. I didn't have to, but that was the force of when it was like, and the reason why that moment was so important was that was the first time I did not accept my mother's frame as my own. I knew damn well I did a good job taking care of this house over the weekend. You're not gonna make me feel bad because I took a chair out of the kitchen and put it in the living room. If you feel bad about it, you hold on to that. But you're not giving that to me. Fuck that shit. I'm not accepting it. And she looked at me and she went right back in the house. And I feel like that's when I really earned the respect of my mother. Like, I'm not lying. Our relationship was way different after that. Cause when I said it, it was just leave me alone. But there was so much weight behind it. And what that was me saying, again, I don't accept this. You can kick me out the house right now. I will leave, but I'm not accepting your frame on this. You're crazy right now. And that's why she walked away, because she felt that. She understood I wasn't playing about that. If you want to kick me out over moving a chair from the kitchen to the living room, do it. But I'm not accepting this shit. And our relationship was better ever since then. But I think that's one of the most important things about overcoming the trauma of being raised by a single mother. Like, you have to realize that a lot of times you're dealing with a female's emotional instability, and that begins to become your frame of reference for things, and you got to break out of that. And it's funny because I had something that happened to me at work that was kind of similar, where there was an older black woman that I worked with, and I made like very small mistake, right? It won't even nothing crazy. And she came to me about it, and she was just nagging and nagging and nagging. And me at this point, like my stoicism level is like, like I don't give a fuck what she talking. I'm like, okay, yeah. Like, and she can tell I don't give a fuck. Right? Like she's trying to, and really, this is what women do. They try to drag you into their emotional state. So how they feel about it, you gotta feel the same way. And you cannot accept that. That's what my mother was trying to do, and that's what that woman at work was trying to do. She was way more upset about it than I was, and she was trying to drag me into her emotional state, and I didn't allow her to do that. And I could tell she was getting upset because she was like, she wanted me to like demonstrate to her that I understood what she was saying, and I said no. I got it. Because she realized I didn't give a fuck. And so she was trying to be petty by making me show that, like, bitch, I know what the fuck you saying. I got it. And of course, respectfully, right? But that's what they do. And that's one of the worst traumas that young boys have to deal with when it comes to being raised by a single mother, is that you, like, the way that you're disciplined is like, it's so chaotic. Like it's really unhealthy. There's a video that, now I'm not gonna show the video, I don't have to, and it's a disturbing video. So it's like this kid, like a 5-year-old boy, and he did something at school. I forgot exactly what he did, but his teachers called his mom to come out there and to kind of correct his behavior. She whooped the fuck out of this boy with a belt in front of the teachers. And look, just again, I can't show the video because it's very disturbing, but just listen to it and you'll see what I'm saying.
So, you being disrespectful to this motherfucking teacher? Oh, you know you finna get your ass beat by wherever fuck you in, I'm not paying. So what you tell her? What you tell? Get your ass. Get up. Don't play with me. Now talk to her. Now what you tell her?
I'm sorry, but
Huh?
I'm sorry, but
Huh? You know, talk. Get your motherfucking ass back here now, nigga. What happened?
I apologize for being disrespectful.
Oh, we gonna have this problem anymore?
So what do you notice about this video? Now, parents have a right to discipline their kids, but what you notice is that this woman is hysterical. There's like, she's disciplining him from a state of pure emotion. She's disciplining him according to her, like how upset she is with him, as opposed to the appropriate level of response to what happened. So he's a child. He can't help but succumb to her frame of what the events are. So now I got to get my ass whooped at school in front of my teachers and get cussed out by my mom. And because she creates the fucking frame and he's too young to break out of it. But this video is the perfect example. And really, this is like on the extreme end of why, like, you gotta have, and I'm not saying that men aren't abusive or don't overreact. I'm just saying that what I noticed, like, women, it's damn near impossible for them to control their emotions in order to discipline correctly, because it's all based on emotion. And I'll give you another good example with my niece, right? So there was one point where, like, my niece, like, again, the older she got, the worse she got. So my mom basically said, if you fuck up again, I'm taking your phone away, right? Of course, she fucks up again. And she did not want to take the phone away. Now, why didn't she take the phone away? Because, again, her reactions are based on emotions, not structure. And so I was like I got on my mom's ass about this shit. I said, take the damn phone. And see, but that's the chaotic nature of female discipline. It's all based on emotion. it doesn't matter if you did something insignificant. If I'm super upset about it, that's how I'm gonna react. It doesn't matter if you did something really bad. If I'm not upset about it, I'm gonna let it pass. And so when I saw that too, that was another example of how women just fail at disciplining children, because it's based on emotion, not structure. They don't look at the full timeline of behavior. It's how they feel in the moment. I don't care how I feel about it. I have a program of discipline for you, and you're gonna stick to it. You make XYZ mistake, you get this punishment. End of story. Regardless of how I feel, I'm gonna act according to the structure of the discipline that I think is appropriate. That's how men think. Women, it's just, how do I feel? Oh, I want to beat the shit out of you in front of your teachers. I'm gonna do it. I want to cuss you out in the grocery store. I'm gonna do it. You know, and it's just a lot of different things. Like, I remember, like, when I was being bullied in school, or when I would come home crying and shit, like, the women, they didn't know what to they didn't know what to tell me and how to deal with shit like that. Like, I remember one of my friends, you know, when his granddad saw that his cousin was trying to bully him, he pulled him to the side and taught him how to, like, box and shit. And that taught him how to, you know, stand up for himself in situations like that. I didn't have shit like that. So, you know, when I would get bullied, I didn't know how to react at times. There were times where I overreacted. I started fights that were completely unnecessary. And there were times where I let people push me around when I shouldn't have, because again, that instability in the household where I'm not getting the proper guidance that I really needed. But, you know, I will say this, because I don't want this to seem like I don't want this video to come across like women don't make contributions to the upbringing of a child, even if it's a single mother. Like, the child is lacking a lot with the lack of a father, but I still think that women can do good as far as like when I look at my own mother, you know, just to give her credit where credit is due, like, for her shortcomings, one thing about my mom was that she was always a hard worker. You know, I was only in the projects for like up until I was like 4 or 5 years old. And then, you know, she got us out of the hood and we moved to the country, and then we moved to the city that we're in now. And she always kept us out of like the trenches, basically. And we were always in at least like a halfway decent neighborhood. And I think that played a big role as far as like keeping us out of trouble. Well, at least keeping me out of trouble. You know, my sister, she sought the streets. You know, the streets be calling bitches. But, you know, that kept me out of trouble. And, you know, my mom, you know, she had us going to church and things like that. And I think one of the good things that I got from my mother, well, you know, my mom, she's a very like careful, cautious type of person. And for a man, that can be good and bad, because, you know, with men, we got to be a bit more of like risk takers and bold. But I think that caution that my mom had, I feel like I inherited that from her. And I think that was another thing that kind of helped keep me out of trouble. But the reason why I think about that, because I went to, like, the other day I was in the grocery store, and there was a woman in front of me, and she had a crutch. And so she, you know, she was at the cash register and she finished getting checked out. And so I was up next. And so she was about to walk out the door, and I ran over to the door and I opened it for her. You know, she said, thank you. And I said, you know, no problem. And when I went back to the cash register to, you know, finish getting what I wanted. And the lady, the cashier, she said, your mother did a really good job with you, I can tell. And when she said that, you know, I had to take a moment and really appreciate that, you know, again, even though I didn't have a good masculine father figure or role model in the household, you know, and my mom, she still gave me valuable lessons, and she, you know, there were positive influences that she had on me in her own way. I would have never been able to get, you know, any sort of like masculine principle or fatherly principle from her, obviously, as a woman, but she still gave me different things of value in her own way, what she could. And I think for guys like us who are raised by single mothers, when we start to realize like the fucked up programming that we have, we tend to focus a lot on what we missed out on by not having a father or male role models in our life, that we don't really appreciate the good that our mothers did. And so I'm glad that that woman said that, and she told me that, because like, I had to kind of stop, like, you know what, she's right. Like, you know, despite everything or what I didn't have, you know, I feel good about the person that I was able to become, even though a lot of it was my own work. You know, just being real, my mom at least got me to that point. You know, she got me to the point of being able to reflect and go inward, and then start going on the journey that I needed to by myself in order to cultivate my own masculinity that I just could never get from her, you know. But I still have to appreciate the good that she did for me. And, you know, I just want to leave on that positive message, because I do love my mother dearly. I'm not trying to make this out to be like she's just like, you know, single mothers are just terrible people. Because it's not that. It's just the fact that when it comes to raising kids, it really is a joint effort. There are unique things that women bring to the table, but they're also unique and valuable things that men bring to the table. And when you're missing one or the other, it can have devastating consequences for the children. You know, it's like a basketball team. Yeah, you need your star player. You need your LeBron James, your Michael Jordan. Like, that's the father, but they still need a supporting cast. You know, Michael Jordan, he needed Steve Kerr, Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen. That's the woman. You know, the woman is the supporting cast. She's the bench players, things like that. You know, so you can do your man shit, and she's taking care of the house and the kids. So it's a joint effort. So it's not necessarily about, you know, women going out of their way to fuck, you know, boys up. It's just that, you know, they don't have that masculine father in the house. Now, where I will place blame is when they go after thug niggas that you already know are not going to be father material. But I digress. You know, the Pookie and Ray Ray video will be coming soon, I guess. But I hope you guys enjoyed that video, and I will see you on the next. So, Johnny.